Number 2, Brandon Allen wins the job in camp after the Niners go out and sign the pastronaut, Josh Dobbs. And Allen's going to get his first start here today. Not a very accurate passer in his career. In 9 career starts, 2-7. What can you tell us about what you've seen and what you know about Brandon Allen, JD?
Yeah, and what an opportunity he gets thrown into with the 49ers season hanging on the brink here at 5-5. I mean, he's somebody that Kyle Shanahan is confident that can run the basics of his offense and didn't have to change the game plan much. I know Kyle mentioned that earlier in the week, as it really did look like Brock, I think everybody thought he was going to be able to go, but then as the week progressed, unable to go, and so Brandon Allen becomes the guy. Really tough spot for him in Lambeau Field with the season feeling like it's on the line for the 49ers, but I think, keep it simple. Don't turn it over. Try to establish the run. Short passing game. Protect and give him time to throw. And he's somebody that I think they have the utmost confidence in that he can perform at a respectable level if everything can stay on schedule. But I think everything has to stay on schedule, which has not been a consistent theme for the 49ers this season.
Well, and the news broke on Friday, really at the top of our show at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, that when Kyle met with the media, that Brock, before they got in the plane, he said, Brock is not going to play in this one. And I think immediately it sort of sparked that quarterback debate again, right? There's always going to be the controversy when there's a 2 and a 3, especially when the 3 is a guy that people know and have seen more recently than they've seen in a guy like Brandon Allen, right? Josh Dobbs is a guy who people saw start games last year, started a game against the 49ers, played for Arizona, went to Minnesota and played pickup football without knowing his teammates' names for a game and leads them to a victory after an injury to Kirk Cousins. And I forget who the number 2 guy was who stepped in there. But I think because there's fresh memories of Josh Dobbs playing football, and even this preseason, I thought he played pretty well. But you talk to people who are better evaluators than I am, and I wasn't out there for all of training camp, they would say that Brandon Allen had a damn good preseason and training camp as well. What would you say to anybody who thinks, Josh Dobbs is more of a put the team on my back, go win guy than Brandon Allen?
Yeah, I think Allen did have a strong camp from being out there. I can attest to that. I think he did perform at a higher level throughout camp and the preseason when you factor it all together than Dobbs did. I think Dobbs maybe played better in the games or flashed more in the games. So I think people have seen him win a couple of games. And he's lost a lot of games in the NFL too, Dobbs. And I think when he's had more opportunities to get out there and defenses have really had chances to study him and prepare for him, he's been less effective. I'm of the belief, in a sense, that Dobbs would be the guy if, let's say, Brock Purdy was starting this game and you didn't know if he was going to have the ability to finish it, and Dobbs comes in and has the ability in a chaotic environment to make a couple plays with his legs and just make things happen. Just go in, make things happen, almost throw the game plan out and be successful that way. He did that a little bit, as you mentioned, with the Cardinals, and also when he went to the Vikings was able to do that. I think Brandon Allen is the guy that has established himself as the backup quarterback throughout the season. And so when you're going to have somebody start a game, even if you don't know it till Friday, that Kyle Shanahan would feel more comfortable with him being in and around the offense longer from being with this 49ers team the last couple years.
So per ESPN, the 32-year-old Allen has made 9 career starts, and his teams have gone 2-7 in those games. His last start came with Cincinnati as a member of the Bengals in the 2021 regular season finale when the Bengals rested Joe Burrow. So he got one of those starts like Sam Darnold did last year for the 49ers in the end of the season. Let Brock Purdy go out there and get out there and get some rest. Joe Burrow was rested for the playoffs that year. Allen has thrown 3 passes in the last 3 seasons, including none since joining San Francisco in 2023. He was a member of the Rams in 2017 when Packers coach Matt LaFleur was the team's offensive coordinator. So how about that? A little full circuit connection there.
He's well established in the Shanahan, McVay, LaFleur,
Zach Taylor. Yes, I know they're all sort of the same offense. Yeah, and that would tell you about what these quarterbacks think. It's funny. Oftentimes, I think we sit on the outside and we go, "This backup quarterback can't do anything for this team. Why do these teams keep him around? What's going on?" It's because they can operate an offense. And what I would say is, I don't think Brandon Allen's ceiling is very high, from what I recall from seeing him play for a couple of seasons early on in his career. And again, it was more like spot start stuff. I was a big fantasy football guy, and you pay attention to the production you're going to get from any of your other guys. Probably Joe Mixon back there and Gio Bernard were running backs for him when he was out there with the Bengals. But when I think about what he can do, I don't think his floor is that low. but I think they're hoping it can just be a baseline here. Again, if you need to drive the field 80 yards at the end of the game to win, I don't know how good we all feel about that. But again, this guy's been around football for a long time, 32 years old. By the way, didn't get into the NFL till he was 27. He's one of those older veteran, like a Brandon Whedon type of quarterback when he got to the NFL. But on the other side of things, a stud young quarterback in Jordan Love. By the way, we call him young. He sat on the bench for a number of years. He's got experience running an offense like this. Do you think with the way Jordan Love is playing right now, it's 62.5% passing completion on the year, 2,081 yards, 16 touchdowns, does have 11 picks, and he's thrown an interception in every game this season. Are we getting more of the Jordan Love we saw at the back end of last year when he went like 6-1 or whatever it was down the stretch and threw, 18 touchdowns and 1 interception or something like that? He went crazy into the postseason. Or are we going to get the more average sort of figuring it out Jordan Love that we saw in the first half of last year?
Yeah, and I think it's even a tale of what Jordan Love do the 49ers get compared to the playoff game that they played at Levi's back in January.
Sure.
Do you get the first half Jordan Love or the second half Jordan Love of that game? Because I think, first half Jordan Love of that game, he was really good, and they were running the football, and things were on schedule. Second half, pressure and elements a little bit, I thought, got to him, and they were able to force him into some missed throws. So, yeah, you really don't, I think, game to game and week to week, totally know if you're going to get the buttoned up and explosive play capable Jordan Love, or you get the guy that's going to throw it to the other team. I guess you get the guy that's going to throw it to the other team no matter what, as you mentioned, with the at least an interception in every game. I think that's in some ways the pathway for the 49ers, Copes, is force multiple turnovers in this one, and maybe force Green Bay to play a little bit from behind, keep the game on schedule offensively. Again, then we get into, can the 49ers hold the lead, which has obviously been a huge thing. But I still think today, considering the circumstances, you're always better off getting ahead and then trying to close it out than you are trying to fall behind in this kind of environment with a backup quarterback starting for you that may not have that ceiling as you talked about.
By the way, I should also just put this out. It's not just that Brock Purdy's not going to be out there today. The Niners will also be without, this is as of Friday, Nick Bosa, who did not travel with the team. Kyle said he was going to stay back. Brock did travel with the team, so he will be there on the sidelines. Nick Bosa did not travel. Charvarius Ward out for this one. Niners are ramping him back up, but he is back with the team. Jacob Cowing out with the concussion. Tatum Bethune and Kevin Givens remains out. Now, the other big question, and we'll talk more about this with Matt Mayoko, our insider from NBC Sports Bay Area, when he joins us momentarily, but Trent Williams. I mean, John Feliciano hasn't played this year. That's not really one anybody's thinking about at the forefront of their mind, I don't think, though you'd like him back just as another veteran presence. Trent Williams at left tackle, the more we got into this week, week 12, like the preparation for week 12, the more it started to feel like last week Trent Williams was really, really not doing okay. He got a injection into his ankle, I guess, for that bone bruise, and bone bruises don't just dissipate. They don't just go away, right? They said he was probably revving at about 60 to 70% in last week's game, and I think it probably showed. This is a game where you got to run the ball a whole lot with Christian McCaffrey. It's what they want to do anyway, but thoughts on Trent Williams? I mean, if you don't have your starting quarterback and you don't have your left tackle, things get a whole lot hairier, and we'll talk about Nick Bosa in a little bit.
Yeah, and Adam Schefter had the report this morning that the 49ers are more optimistic, I guess, that Trent Williams would be able to gut it out. Still going to be a game-time decision, so that helps. But, yeah, I don't think anybody truly knew until Trent Williams got out there on the field on Sunday just how banged up he was.
Sure.
And then being in the locker room post-game, I mean, he really was struggling to get up. He did his post-game media availability sitting down, and I actually walked out of the locker room with him last Sunday, and he had a pretty good limp going. It was pretty tough for him to move, and you could tell that he was in some significant pain, and that was even taking the shot to be able to make himself available to play. So we'll see. I think at this point, I feel like it's all hands on deck that can be on deck, and then if you can't win, a couple of these next 2-3 games, then you're in a position where maybe guys are going to start to get shut down anyway. So I feel like it's almost last stand time in a sense. Grind it out, give yourself a chance to win, and hopefully that extends the season for the 49ers. If you don't, then maybe some of these guys who have been really banged up start to not play if this team falls more out of the race.
Adam Copeland, John Dickinson with you. It's Week 12, 49ers and the Green Bay Packers. Kickoff coming your way at 1:25. We'll be with you till about 12:25. We will catch up with Matt Mayoko in just a little bit, our insider from NBC Sports Bay Area, and we'll catch up with Larry Kruger before we get going, as well as some other pieces that you're used to here on the 49er pregame show on KNBR. 1:25 kickoff. Brandon Allen gets the start. No Nick Bosa today. No Brock Purdy today. And as JD said, Adam Schefter of ESPN reporting that the 49ers more optimistic today than they were maybe coming into Green Bay that Trent Williams could play. When we come on back, we'll get more into what this game means for the 49ers' playoff hopes and what has changed or what has given you any proof or thought that the 49ers are capable of turning some of this around as they get ready for a tough opponent on the road at Lambeau Field. We'll talk about it next. Adam Copeland, JD, Niners and the Packers on the Sports Leader.
Yeah, today, really. I know he had a plan for his shoulder all week. He's going to rest it a little bit on Wednesday, and I think we kind of split reps there on Wednesday. He's going to rest it a little bit, and then I think the plan was Thursday to come out and practice, and I guess just in warm-ups just wasn't feeling right, and so still expecting him to kind of go in, get treatment, come back, but yeah, I kind of found out today.
Adam Copeland, John Dickinson back with you. That was the voice of today's starting quarterback for the 49ers, Brandon Allen, talking about when he found out that he was going to get the start. Yeah, Brock Purdy was out there at practice on Thursday. Then there was the report that he had pulled himself from practice, and I spoke to Kyle on Thursday on our show and said that he had said that, we're trying to ramp him up. We're hopeful for him to go tomorrow. He sounded more like it was kind of part of the plan. But then we found out from John Lynch on Friday morning on the KNBR morning show, and we'll hear that interview a little bit later, that Brock Purdy had actually gotten an MRI. They said there wasn't much in that MRI. Steve Young when I spoke to him on Thursday, said, when you get an MRI like that and nothing shows, it just means that there's a spot. There's something there that's bugging him. There's a little knot or something that he's having trouble getting worked out. And Kyle did say, he was having trouble getting loose. So Brandon Allen gets the start today. It's not ideal for any team in the situation the 49ers are in to lose their starting quarterback for any portion of time. But in terms of what this game means, the goal is still the same. Brandon Allen's on this team to help this team win, and today he's got to do everything he can, not just help him win, but don't lose the game for him. There are too many moving parts on this team, too many banged-up parts, and too many facets and phases of the game where they have not been excellent. It's imperative today that Brandon Allen take care of the football.
Yeah, you can't turn it over. I think that's key number one, and then force turnovers if you're the 49ers defense. But, this week and next week, and we can stick to today here for the time being. It's massive. You look at where the 49ers are right now. They're 10th in the NFC. They're still very much in the division race, but it's more, can this team split, either winning today or winning next week at Buffalo. Buffalo just beats Kansas City. Just salvage something to be playing for when they get back home in 2 weeks and face the Bears and then the Rams on Thursday Night Football. If you can get to a point where those games still feel meaningful, I think they have a chance to get on track. But now, and this is where last Sunday's loss to the Seahawks is just, it's just a crusher, especially when you look at the layout of this game with them having to play without Brock Purdy and Nick Bosa and others, that long list that you read off there in the opening segment. So it really, truly is survival mode. In a lot of ways, it's not a must-win, but it feels like a must-win. It feels like a desperation-type game for the 49ers, and they got to do it with a backup quarterback.
I would disagree. I think it is a must-win. I think with the way the season has gone and when you look at the outlook for this team, you can't fall further down. You can't fall more behind NFC teams and common opponents and these other teams that you're going to have to be facing head-to-head in terms of teams outside of the division if you do end up vying for a wild card spot. Now, it's not out of the question that they go on some kind of run here, right? We saw them start 3-5 in 2021 and make it to the NFC Championship game. That is, I don't want to say the outlier, but that's maybe a more of a product of what kind of team that was relative to the success that this team had last season and has now gotten this far.
Well, the only time you feel good about 5-5 is when you're 3-5.
Exactly.
Right?
When you're 3-5, then you get back to it. Well, I guess what I'm looking at here is last year out of the bye, after they had those 3 losses, it was Cincinnati, it was Cleveland, it was Minnesota, and then it was Cincinnati. They lose those 3, they go into the bye, and they come off, and they get red hot until Christmas. Already that hasn't happened to this point this season. And they're,
exactly.
And they're more hurt, and now they're down Brock Purdy, and they're down Nick Bosa. So I've been trying to think to myself, what can the 49ers show me that will let me think and will give me confidence in a run towards the postseason? Because to your point, they are still in the division race. Losing that game to Seattle might not have that big of a difference if they can go out and they win a bunch of these other games coming up, or 2 of the next 3 games, including this one today, coming up. And if they win their next 2 games against Arizona, which is, by the way, final game of the season, could mean an awful lot. Haven't sold that flight yet, JD. I'm holding on to that thing for right now. And then the Rams game that they still have to come here in San Francisco, or at Levi's Stadium. So I think the one thing that I need to see, or not one thing, but I think something that would give me confidence besides a win today would be a Christian McCaffrey game. To see that Christian McCaffrey can still be a guy that can shoulder the load. Because that's what I look at now is there's no Brock Purdy to say, let me put this team on my back and go win a game when we're desperate, to your point, having a desperation situation here. Brandon Allen may not be that guy, but Christian McCaffrey is absolutely that guy. And if there's ever been a day for Christian McCaffrey to say, hand me the rock, boys, let me go get my thing, let me go get it done, today's the day. Today's the day they need McCaffrey. If we start seeing a couple of games like that from him, and I'm not even talking 130 or 150 or 4 touchdown days. I'm just talking games that look like Christian McCaffrey games where you know that the other team is worried that he's going to touch the ball.
Yeah, it's explosiveness. It's the ability where you run, toss left, and it picks up 7 yards because Trent Williams and Aaron Banks are getting after it, and he's hitting the hole, and it seems like he's able to get that chunk with ease. That's what you really want to be able to see, and I'm with you because I think they are not going to put this game on Brandon Allen's shoulders, and we've seen, when Kyle Shanahan gets his back against the wall, who does he go to? It's typically Christian McCaffrey, and typically it's Deebo Samuel, both in the running game. We can get into why the running game hasn't worked with Deebo Samuel and all of that. That's been a big talk.
Do we have to?
Yeah, we don't really have to, but it hasn't. But it hasn't been good, and we know it hasn't been good. But again, I think you look to when they get their back against the wall and Kyle doesn't totally trust the quarterback, and I'm not saying he doesn't trust Brandon Allen, but even if you do trust Brandon Allen, you don't think Brandon Allen's going to go out here at Lambeau Field and light the Packers up and throw for 250, 300 yards and multiple touchdowns unless everything truly is clicking, and the way to get everything truly clicking is to be able to run the game or run the ball and have Christian McCaffrey look more like an offensive player of the year or an MVP candidate. That, to me, I'm with you, would give the 49ers a lot of hope, but it, in a lot of ways, has to add up to a win. I mean, we've seen the get a lead, can't hang on, this thing slips away. We've seen it 3 times in 3 division games. It's the reason why this team is not 8-2 at this point, to where you would feel like today is not a desperation must-win type of a game. So they got to go out and do all those things, but they also have to have it result, I feel like, in a victory to help further the fight to next week and further the fight even beyond next week when they get back home for those 2 games.
You have to win it. I don't think it's like, Christian had a great game. You can't have a game where he goes for 200 yards and 2 touchdowns, but Jordan Love throws for 505. That's not going to do you any good. You need to see consistency. Yeah. But I guess what I'm saying is, with Nick Bosa out, they've had a really tough time generating and creating pressure anyway this year with a guy who's supposed to be one of the best pass rushers in all of football, a former defensive player of the year. When you've got those problems and now you don't have him and you're already missing Javon Hargrave, you're already down one of your linebackers from the Super Bowl in last year, the defensive play at the end of games when things have started to wear down a bit, and maybe it's just because they're on the field too much at the end of games, and obviously 17 points put up last week was a huge issue for the Niners. I don't know what they're going to need today, but they're going to need a good run performance and they're going to need a good defensive performance. I think that's the only way you win this game.
They're going to need to get into the 20s. I'll say that.
I think you're going to need 24 points to win this game.
Yeah, without a doubt. And, I don't think the elements are going to be conducive. This is not going to be like the playoff game in the 2021 season where the elements really make a significant impact on it and slow down what was, at that point, a really explosive Aaron Rodgers-led Packers offense, and the snow starts coming down more and more, and that was closer to an elite 49er defense than this defense is. So they're going to have to score some points. I think, if anything, maybe the Niners were hoping that there would be more elements, that it would become more just the classic chaotic type environment to be able to scramble and maybe force some turnovers and keep the game in the teens and try to win it that way. I don't see how that's necessarily going to be possible, but the defense is going to have to be on point and not wear down as the game goes on and give the offense a chance to where if they can just nudge 20, if it's 20-23, something like that, it would be enough to give them a shot.
Adam Copeland, John Dickinson with you. The Health Report is sponsored by the Alameda County Sheriff's Office. The Alameda County Sheriff's Office is seeking highly motivated people to join their diverse and growing law enforcement agency. Apply at joinasco.com. Brandon Allen going to get the start today. First start in 3 years, or 2 years, I should say. 3 years for the 49ers. First start in his career in the last 3 years. First ever for the 49ers is the right way to say that. Because of the injury to Brock Purdy, he did travel with the team. Nick Bosa is out today. He did not travel. Travarius Ward, Jacob Cowan, Tatum Bethune, and Kevin Givens all out. Still waiting on word on Trent Williams, though, as JD told us. Adam Schefter reporting earlier this morning that the 49ers maybe more bullish or more optimistic on his ability to play today. We'll see what happens as we get closer to kickoff. Again, a 1:25 kickoff today, just under 3 hours away from kickoff at Lambeau Field, where John Dickinson is hanging out. The super reporter, boots on the ground. You were doing Dubs OT last night too, weren't you?
Yeah, Dubs OT from beautiful Appleton the last 2 nights after the game against the Pelicans on Friday.
By the way, JD said that with a completely straight face. From beautiful Appleton is where I did my Dubs OT last couple of nights. You're the man, dude.
Yeah, 2. Dubs OT from Appleton, Dubs OT from Tampa this year, Dubs OT all over the map.
Doesn't matter where the Dubs are. JD is getting it done wherever he is, covering the 49ers the very next day. We'll catch up with our guy, Matt Mayoko, our 49ers insider from NBC Sports Bay Area. He's out at Lambeau Field getting ready for the Niners and the Packers. Talk to him about some of the health and what he has seen from the Niners starting quarterback today in Brandon Allen. More to come. Adam Copeland, John Dickinson. It's Niners, Packers, and it's only here on the Sports Leader.
Brutal. The most important time in the game for me to be out there, I wasn't able to be. So I hate missing time. That's why I pushed through last week, and hopefully it's not too long.
I just assumed that was the voice of Nick Bosa, who's not going to play today, did not make the trip to Lambeau Field. Adam Copeland, John Dickinson with you. Niners and the Packers coming your way right here on KNBR at 1:25 this afternoon. And we'll go back out to the broadcast booth where John Dickinson is live at Lambeau Field. And I believe he's sitting right next to our guy, Matt Mayoko, our 49ers insider from NBC Sports Bay Area. What's going on, Matt?
We're close enough. I see him over there.
I was going to say,
opposite corners.
if you look to your right, there's JD. But JD,
We have a beef going on.
I don't ever want Matt to look me in the eye ever, so I just kind of. It's
Good
What-
thing,
Matt.
good thing
what's
I'm
the
socially
beef?
awkward, and I never look people in the eye.
yeah, right.
I know. It's just, there'll be brats. We might not have a beef, but we'll have brats later today, I'm sure.
Okay, here's in the line I used earlier, JD, there will be brats, but there just won't be Brocks. That's the issue that the Niners are
That's
dealing
very
with today.
true. That's
There we
very
go,
true.
I know.
I think he was on the first bus coming here to Lambeau Field today, so probably getting some PT. But yeah, he is here, and I think you said Nick Bosa is not here.
Yeah.
Trent Williams is here, but we haven't seen him yet on the field to know if he's going to be available for this game. It didn't seem so good, did it, John, during the week?
No, it really didn't. And I think we really got the first lead toward how bad it was in the game on Sunday. He didn't look good in the game, and then after the game, he really didn't look good in the locker room, and to the point where I thought it would have been a tough ask for him to be able to get out there this week, especially given how little he did during the week.
Yeah, and I mean he had it shot up. He had the pain-killing injection, which a lot of times coaches won't say that, but Kyle Shanahan said it on Monday that the Toradol wore off, and he was he wasn't feeling great. He's still in a lot of pain with that ankle. So, I mean, I think you could definitely make the argument that the 49ers won't have their two most important players on the field today, and there's a good chance, I think, also that Trent Williams won't be able to go, and he's top 5 most important players on the team.
So how do the Niners get a win here, Matt?
Oh,
I mean,
you know what? I don't know that the Packers are that great. They could have, should have lost to the Bears last week. They could have, should have lost to the Jaguars a couple weeks earlier. I think just Brandon Allen has to just be, very much in control, make quick decisions. It's been a long time since he's played, but I think just getting the ball out on time, getting the ball into the hands of, all the guys who are still out there, including George Kittle coming back, I think they can stay competitive in this game. I don't know if they can win it. It kind of reminds me of that Monday night game. What year was that? 2018, where C.J. Beathard came in here and 49ers were struggling. And they darn near won that game against Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. So I think they'll find a way to somehow make this thing close. And I think a lot of times when everything is stacked up against a team, that's often when they kind of play loose and free and play some good football. So we'll see. I mean, I don't think anybody expects the 49ers to win this one, but I think they'll keep it close.
Matt Mayoko joins us from the broadcast booth at Lambeau Field. Niners and the Packers at 1:25. What can you tell us about Brandon Allen? Because we did the show on Friday, and it seemed like almost immediately after Allen was named the starter, and I don't think that should be a surprise to anybody. He's the number 2, and he won the number 2 job out of camp, and he'd been the number 2 all year. Josh Dobbs hadn't dressed for a game, I don't believe. He'd been inactive unless I'm wrong, I think every game this season.
He dresses.
He dresses because he's the third quarterback, but he's inactive. Correct? Yeah. So I guess the question is, what can you tell us about Brandon Allen? What should we expect to see from him? I think a lot of people either have never seen him play or haven't in a number of years, and we've seen Josh Dobbs play in the last couple.
Yeah, Josh Dobbs had more starts last year than Brandon Allen has had in his entire career.
There you go.
As a NFL career that started in 2016 when he was a draft pick of the Jags. I think the reason ultimately he won the number 2 job in the estimation of Kyle Shanahan is because he's more similar to Brock Purdy. And so if they needed to go to a quarterback in the course of a game, they would be working from the same call sheet. And I'm sure, they're in the days leading up to the game and last night, he would submit his plays that he's most comfortable with in the game plan. But I think it kind of to Kyle Shanahan's point of nothing really changes because stylistically they're very similar. They thought that Purdy early in the week would be the quarterback, and so I guess the good news for the 49ers is that the game plan that they started to install early in the week, thinking that Purdy would be able to play, nothing changes. It's the same thing that they would install, whether it was Purdy or whether it was Brandon Allen. And I think things do change a little bit with Josh Dobbs as far as what he's comfortable with. But, Brandon Allen knows this system. He came here last year in knowing, the kind of the roots of it. He's been in this similar style before, so I think he'll function. I don't think it's going to be. I don't think he'll be deer in the headlights. I think he'll have an opportunity to move the ball and make plays.
Does it feel like this game today is a last stand for the 49ers? Do you sense that there's a belief that they feel they have to win today, specifically to keep fighting beyond today, Buffalo, and then the 2 home games after?
I think so. I mean, what they say, just realistically, they have to win this game. What is going on here?
Is it a barbershop quartet?
Yeah, I think so.
It sounds like
Looks like it, yeah.
Yeah, only in Green Bay, folks. I would say that it is. It's not mathematically a must-win, but this is a definite must-win, and for a couple of different reasons. One, they just need to win games in order to stay in playoff contention. But then also, I think they would lose like every tiebreaker. They already are behind in the NFC West as far as the tiebreakers go. And then this would be kind of the last straw as far as even having a chance at a wild card.
Yeah, and they don't have it against the Vikings if they end up with them.
Yeah, and right now they're 1-3 in the division. So the best that they could hope for within the division is a 500 record. Yeah, and then the other part of it too is if they can't win this game, then they're not a playoff team. They're not capable of going to Buffalo and winning if they can't win this game. They're not capable of, even though it'd be at Levi Stadium, of beating the Lions in Week 17. And they're not capable of stringing together wins throughout the season, which includes going to Miami and playing on the road, which is another long trip, which, Miami's not. They're not the greatest team in the world.
Sure.
But the 49ers haven't shown the ability to win the games that they need to win and string consistency together.
Matt, do you think this is a game? Because I've been saying to JD, what would give you the belief? What could happen that would show you the 49ers are capable of going on a run like that? That would be something we hadn't seen this year. And I said the first thing I'm looking for, I think, outside of a win, of course, and they've won ugly. Winning ugly can be fine. It can be fun to win ugly at times. Yeah. Christian McCaffrey. I said, if there are a couple of Christian McCaffrey games coming where he finds the end zone, we see a couple of explosive runs or big yardage days where he is, like if Brandon Allen isn't the guy to put the team on his back and carry it, Christian McCaffrey can be. We've seen him do it before, and he can be the offensive player of the year if he still has that in him. And I do believe it's there just because we haven't seen it in the first couple of games. But if that starts to show itself, if they start to show an element to that run game that we haven't seen that's an explosive element, with Christian McCaffrey over the next couple, that would start to give me the belief that they can really turn things around. But in addition to that, because of the nature of today's game, do you think we finally see more Jordan Mason mixed into the running game today?
I don't know. I don't think so. Yeah, I think that they believe that Christian McCaffrey is their best running back on first down, second down, and third down. So I don't think they're just I would be surprised if Jordan Mason gets 7, 8, 9, 10 carries in this game, because I think that they feel like anytime McCaffrey's not out there, they're not giving themselves the best chance of moving the football. But, to your question, you don't get style points in the NFL, but this is a game where I think the 49ers not only need to win it, but they have to show, what you're talking about, a good blend of run and pass. That guys on this revamped front four getting after Jordan Love, creating some issues there, some takeaways. I think coming out of this game, if they can win and win in a way that it looks nice, then I think that then maybe there is some hope for when the other guys come back. But we haven't seen it yet. And, it has been. Even their wins have been kind of ugly where, even games where they've gotten off to big leads, they have the third quarter lapse or the fourth quarter lapse, and next thing you know, it's like, oh my gosh, it's a one-possession game, and the other team has the ball, and the 49ers are on the verge of losing another double-digit lead. So they just need to put a game together because, even when the schedule came out, the game next week was the one game where I was like, well, they won't win that one, because just look at the travel. And the Bills also coming off their bye week. So a lot of things in the schedule's have kind of conspired against the 49ers. But the game next week was the one where I was like, okay, chalk that up as an L. But, of course, I also thought that, some of these games that they lost, I chalked up as W's too.
Yeah, you look at it, and there have been some issues with the schedule that have put them in a bind, but they also could have beaten Seattle, Arizona, and the Rams, and they'd be 8-2, and they wouldn't need today or next week.
Would you, and I know it's ridiculous because they're 5-5, and if they did win those other 3 games, but if they wouldn't be 5-5.
No.
But it still wouldn't look right.
No. They would be I've said this a few different times, they would be kind of a fraudulent 8-2 if they were 8-2.
Yeah.
We would be talking about, how do they stack up against Detroit and Philly? And I wouldn't feel any better about Detroit specifically, given the way these games have played out.
The difference would be we'd be saying, man, those 49ers, they just know how to play clutch football. They'd be like, things haven't even clicked.
Well, look at the Packers. The Packers have won a bunch of close games, and they're not a great team.
Yeah.
They know how to win, is what we would say.
They know how to win.
In terms
championship, what is it? Championship blood?
Championship medal.
Champions blood.
Champions blood.
Champions blood. That's it. A bunch of veterans know how to win. Now we're like, well, what the hell's going on? We're just trying to figure out what's happening. Just a final thought from you on Jordan Love. Last year at the end of the season, and JD pointed out, I said it was like we had 2 different Jordan Loves in the first half and the second half, and you could say the same about when the Niners saw him in the playoffs, a different Jordan Love in the first half than the second half. What's your analysis of how he's played this season?
Well, not very well. When you look at it, wasn't he he was on a heater last year, wasn't it? 18 touchdowns and 1 interception over a course of games. And now, beginning with, Dre Greenlaw's 2 fourth-quarter picks in the divisional round game, 9 consecutive games in which he's thrown an interception. And so that's 13 interceptions over 9 games. I don't know if he's healthy, but, that kind of started this thing. And I look back on that. Remember how much grief that people were giving Brock Purdy for how he played in that game? And it just maybe just because we're near it, but it didn't seem to me that Jordan Love got the heat that he probably should have gotten for those interceptions in the fourth quarter of that game. And then he signs the big money contract, $55 million a year, right before the opening of training camp, and he hasn't lived up to that yet. Extremely talented guy. And so I am looking forward to seeing how he plays today, see if he can kind of snap out of that or if there's some vulnerability there that the 49ers can exploit.
Matt Mayoko, our 49ers insider from NBC Sports Bay Area. He is live from Lambeau Field, sitting a few feet away from John Dickinson. Matt, appreciate the time as always, man. Enjoy the game.
Yeah, we're about 5.5 feet away from each other.
Probably keep it that way, huh?
Yeah.
Maybe a little further. Maybe,
right,
maybe get out of there, bro.
Have a great game. Okay, see you guys.
All right, later. John Dickinson, Adam Copeland with you from Lambeau Field. By the way, we're streaming twitch.tv/thesportsleader, KNBR.com, and the KNBR app. And if you look closely at John Dickinson, you can see Mike Holler creeping over his shoulder from like 3 steps above. When we come on back, we'll hear from John Lynch, who joins the KNBR Morning Show each and every Friday throughout the Niners season. John Lynch, we'll hear from him next. And then Larry Kruger from Niners Nightly and the Krug Show will join us here to get you ready for the Niners and the Packers. A 1:25 kickoff. No Nick Bosa, no Brock Purdy. You'll get Brandon Allen out there today as the starting quarterback. And we'll find out more on the status of Trent Williams just a little bit later. You'll hear from John Lynch next on the Sports Leader. Adam Copeland, John Dickinson with you, getting you ready for the Niners and the Green Bay Packers. From Lambeau Field, Niners come in at 5-5, week 12 here. And good point there by Matt. He's like, I just don't think the Packers are world beaters. True, the Niners just not near 100%, missing their starting quarterback, potentially their left tackle, and one of the best defensive ends in football in Nick Bosa. Time for Building the Game Plan, sponsored by Golden State. When you succeed, we succeed. Visit us today at goldenstatelumber.com and by River Islands. Come home to River Islands in Lathrop and discover the San Joaquin River lifestyles with its lakes, parks, and schools. Start your tour today at riverislands.com. It was for me. John Lynch joins the KNBR Morning Show every Friday throughout the Niner season. He did so this week, as he always does, and he opened up the conversation with Murph asking him about that tough loss against Seattle.
Obviously a tough week starting with last Sunday against Seattle. So we've talked to you after tough losses this year before, and you've admitted, yeah, there's an edge, and I'm not happy. So dare I even ask, after that Seattle loss and digesting this week, is that edge back? Are you grumpy this week?
Well, I think it has to be. It's just you got to do. You got to finish things, and we have done a poor job of that this season. And you got to finish games, you got to finish quarters, you got to finish plays, and when you have people down, you gotta make sure you put them away. Look, we've tried to turn the page now because we got a really good football team we're going to face at Lambeau and the Packers. But that Seahawks game was kind of what has plagued us throughout this season, and it's doing a lot of things and playing some good football to get up, especially against our division rivals, and then not being able to find a way to finish. And to try to isolate it to one phase of the ball, no, it's everybody, and we need to be better. We focused really hard on the issues, but the only thing I know how to do is you got to finish everything that you do, and you got to do it individually, you got to do it collectively, and then those things start to translate onto the field.
Yeah, John, we heard the comments earlier this week from Kyle talking about how this team is a few plays away from being 8-2 instead of 5-5. And to your point, this is a team that needs to close out and finish games. But I'm wondering the feeling in the locker room, because this to me seems like a team and a roster that's better than your 5-5 record. So what's the mindset heading into this week into Green Bay, next week in Buffalo, and whether or not you guys can still compete with the top teams in the league?
Yeah, absolutely. We know we can. We can, we will. And, I think it's just a feeling of disappointment. What Kyle said is true, but, at the same point, that's not who we are. We're a 5-5 team right now, and I don't think that sits well with anybody in our organization. And the only way to do something about it is to do something about it. And so we've got a great opportunity. So I think that's the feeling in our locker room, that here's an opportunity against a team who, frankly, is a great illustration. Their season is very similar to ours. They've just found ways. I think they're 6-1 in one possession games, and they've found ways to win, and we haven't done that. So we need to change that.
Talking to John Lynch, the president of football ops and GM of the Niners here. So how do you guys, listen, you've been through before. You're a football player. You do it week by week, any given set, all the cliches, all that stuff. But who do you think you guys draw on this week? Like who leads this team out of that tunnel on Sunday? Who gives that speech, or who makes that play? Like what are you guys leaning on going into this game?
I think we all lean on each other. That's what teams do. And there's tone setters, but I think there's tone setters that go like establish that, hey, this is who we are, and we're going to fight. We're going to fight till the end, and I think we got plenty of those guys. If you watch Jawan Jennings play here of late, I mean, that was one of the most fantastic. I told Jawan, it was one of the most fantastic plays when he catches it on 3rd and 11, I think, at about 7 yards, and drags 4 Seattle defenders. I mean, that was unbelievable. And so there's an example of a guy who's trying to put a team on his back and saying, let's go, and got us really close to doing that. I think Christian is I think on the verge of busting out here. He's such an explosive player. The way Seattle played, they kind of put a shell over everything, were willing to give us some yards, didn't want to give us the big breakouts. But I think we're about to bust. And then defensively, collectively, we just got to do it. We got a lot of great players throughout this roster. I understand that some of our top players are ailing, but we still have a lot of good players. And we got to find a way to get a win. I keep saying it, but that's what it comes down to.
You mentioned Christian McCaffrey's name. I would love an in-depth breakdown of what you've seen from him over the past 2 weeks, and also when it comes to his usage rate, how many carries he's getting out of the backfield, and if you think maybe he could be spelled more by a guy like Jordan Mason.
Well, I think Christian's been really good. I think we all have come to know such a special standard for Christian because that's who he is as a player. And so when he's not having 200 yards from scrimmage, people are going, "What's wrong?" I think he's like I said, I believe that he's on the verge. I see him getting a little bit better, seeing it a little better each week, and I think he's about to bust loose. As for the usage, I think Seattle was a weird game, and then there weren't a whole lot of possessions. There were long drives, but a lot of there weren't possessions. So you gotta. It actually would be a great thing if we're spelling Christian because we'll be staying on the field more, be scoring more, getting more possessions, getting the ball back more. We know that we have really capable backups with JP and Garindo. At the same time, it's hard to take Christian McCaffrey off the field, and he doesn't want to come off the field. And so we'll find that balance, and it's important that we do.
Last few minutes here with John Lynch as the Niners getting their game face on to go to Green Bay, 125 on KNBR. So, John, the offensive line is, one of those least sexy topics, but when football fans get going, they get their opinions going. And there's two stories on your offensive line. There's the stats that say that, analytically or Pro Football Focus or whatever, that they're grading out well. And then there's the fans who say Brock Purdy's running for his life. They couldn't block for Christian McCaffrey. The O-line's not playing well, particularly up the middle. Where do you come down? Would you like to see more out of your O-line? Are they getting it done to play winning football, or do they have to bear some of the blame here?
I think when you're 5-5, we can all be better, but I think our O-line's been pretty good this year. I don't always agree with the folks at PFF and the guys in their basement grading it, but I think I'm in line with them. I think on the whole, and certainly we can always be better. I think on the whole we've played decent, and some of that is just the way Brock plays, and Brock makes plays with his legs. So, I think. Fans sometimes want to have it both ways. What a great scramble, but then, they also want to say, and sometimes it's not the O-line break it down. It's just things are covered, and he sees an opportunity to go make things happen. And so, but I think our O-line's playing well.
We know how important George Kittle is to this offense, especially in the run game as a blocker. So what does it mean for this team to potentially get him back this weekend, John?
Well, George adds so much. I talked about tone setters early, and everything from his energy to his play, his versatility. He's really good in the run. He's really an explosive threat in the pass game. He's a fantastic player, and I think George he brings an energy that is palpable, that's contagious, and you need those type of players. And so when they're out, you certainly miss them. I do want to tell you that Eric Saubert played really well, but we want both those guys out there. And so it's nice to have Kittle back. He's healthy. He's had 2 really good practices this week, and looking for good things from George.
And, we always ask you about the players. What do you think of Kittle? What do you think of Warner? What do you think? What about Kyle? I wonder, what could you tell us about how you and Kyle are communicating this year? Fans are upset. Radio hosts are upset. Bad play call on 2nd 11, bad clock management. Should have called a timeout. Shouldn't have called a timeout. How do you evaluate Kyle so far this season?
I think Kyle Shanahan's a fantastic coach, and I think he gives us an advantage each and every game we go out. Sometimes things just don't come together, and we take that responsibility. I know I do. Kyle does. This is not what we hoped for. It's not what we expected from this team, but you got to deal with what you deal with. And Kyle's tough-minded. He's been around this business for a long time. What he's solely focused on is fixing the issues that are ailing us, and that's what he goes to work. He works tirelessly. I've got nothing but belief in Kyle and what he brings to the table, and happy and proud to be working with him. So we're working our tails off to try to get this thing right, as is this whole team, and hopefully we can go get that done at Green Bay.
And that said, when you guys are alone in the room and you see that the NFL says they blew, or Mike Pereira says that the NFL blew that call with the back-to-back timeouts, are you guys throwing chairs around the room?
Oh man, I think Mike Pereira said it well. In these things, you learn. I think Mike said it very well, and I think it was pretty clear what happened. And you can't make excuses. There were plenty of other opportunities, but that had a big effect on what could have been. And we got to make it such that you're not relying on those things, because you can't always trust it. And so that's all I'll say there.
But suffice to say, Mike Pereira said it well.
Yes.
All right, John, you got your game face on. We know the deal, and obviously we'll follow the travails of the injuries before kickoff, and then we'll watch a football game on Sunday. We appreciate you always being generous with your time and thoughts, and have a great trip out to Green Bay.
Yeah, thanks, John.
Thanks, guys. Aloha.
I'm not entirely sure. Like I said, I think each season is so unique, and there's ebbs and flows of each season. There's different players on the field and different coaches. There's no blame to put anywhere. I just think that, honestly, there is a little bit of blame. I think the blame is our offense needs to perform at a better, and that's players. Coach Shanahan gives us opportunities to go out there and close games, and we've kind of missed out on those opportunities, whether it's a missed blocking on a run play by anybody, a bad cut, even Brock with a bad throw. Like we just miss out on some of those opportunities that we've been cleaner before in the past. And I think that's one thing. I think our defense is playing at a level enough for us to win. I think we should be scoring 25 plus points a game to be able to win those games. And to me, the pressure's on the offense. And it's not really pressure. It's just like, hey guys, just go play football the way you've been playing, and we have to be better than we have been.
The voice of George Kittle, who's going to play today. And by the way, he may be the only guy on the Niner roster who can just give his own injury report and be like, no, I'm playing. I'm going to go for this week. Niners and the Packers, 125. We'll have it for you right here on the Sports Leader. Adam Copeland, John Dickinson with you. JD is out at Lambeau Field. And another guy who's going to help us get ready for this one. I imagine he's been doing the Kruger show since like 6 a.m. this morning, and he's getting ready for Niners Nightly. A whole week of it coming your way, Monday to Friday, 6 to 7 p.m. on KNBR. Larry Kruger joins us. What's going on, Kruger? How are you, bro?
Copes, good to talk to you. JD, good to talk to you. I'm eager to see what this one's going to be today. This is kind of we don't know what we're getting today.
We'll get into plenty of the Niners stuff, but something Matt Mayoko just said to us, and if you're looking for a silver lining, and I would agree with this, the Packers may not be as good as their record says they are.
Yeah, they haven't won a bunch of games against good teams, but the Niners haven't beaten a winning team all year.
There you
either.
go.
So. So there's that. But, Green Bay is beatable. I mean, if you watched, I put in that tape and watched Bears-Packers from last week, and the Bears did everything in that game except win. Their quarterback ran. They ran for over 5 yards a carry. DeAndre Swift had a lot of success. So, that's clearly the recipe today. Run the heck out of the football, dominate the time of possession, don't turn it over, win the turnover battle, and maybe you can get out of Green Bay with a win. The one thing that you're going to know is that you're Green Bay, knowing that there's no Bosa, no Purdy, and maybe no Trent. They're going to roll into this game thinking they're getting an easy win, and you just got to make sure that at the end of the day they regret that mindset.
Larry, we talked about Kittle obviously going to go. We know Brock and Bosa are not going to go. Trent Williams is the one still at this stage that's iffy. We don't know if he's going to be able to or not. If Trent Williams can't go, how much does that change what the 49ers are trying to do? Because so much of their safety net typically is get the ball to McCaffrey and run left.
Yeah. They're going to have to, Jalen Moore. I'll say this about Jalen Moore. He's been in the league. He's been on the team a number of years. He knows the offense as well as Trent. He's actually practiced more than Trent in the last 3 or 4 weeks. So, it's next man up. But there's only one Trent Williams. It's Trent Williams is going to Canton, not Trent Williams and Jalen Moore. So so Jalen Moore is going to have to do the best he can. And I'll say this: I talked to him in the locker room on Wednesday or Thursday, and he's not one of these worry wart guys who's like, oh no. He's been practicing, he's been preparing, he feels he's capable, and he's ready.
Krug, what have you, we talked about this on Friday on our show, on the afternoon show, but what have you seen from Brandon Allen preseason-wise, just what you've seen from him on tape, what you remember about him when he was coming in as like a 26-year-old into the NFL and a draft pick by the Jacksonville Jaguars, and what are his tangibles? I remember you said to me on Friday, he's not a get on my back, ride the Brandon Allen train to victory. So what are his tangibles, and what have you seen from him?
Well, he's a good athlete. He's like one of these guys that's just, you look at him and you say, well, kind of mediocre height, mediocre size, nothing really stands out. And then you realize when you start researching him and talking to him and, realizing who he is as a guy, he's one of these guys that's great at everything. He's great at golf. He's great at this. He's great at that. He's just a good athlete. He's just a good all-around athlete. He's smart. He's competitive. He's been in this offense a couple of years now. He looked really sharp in camp as far as his footwork, his timing, the ball he was throwing. He really looked much better this summer than he looked last summer. So, he's a middle of the road. He's only started 9 games in his career. This is only his 10th start. He's 2-7. He's been on some bad teams, but he's also played behind some of the best. I asked him this week about his preparation, and he said, he really has learned a lot from Brock's intense preparation. He feels like Brock's way of going through every single play and every single possibility on every single play is the right way to prepare to run this offense. He just seems like in the right mental space. I think Shanahan said it best, guys, when he said the guys believe in him. They really do. He knows what he's doing. He sends off a "I've got this" vibe, and I think it's very reassuring to the rest of the offense.
And he had a pretty good training camp. I think he did win the job to my eye in training camp. But give the listener and the viewer on YouTube and Twitch, Larry, a sense for just your evaluation of what does he do well? Like what are some throws that he hit to your recollection at training camp? What are some maybe throws that he struggled with a little bit?
Well, he doesn't have a big arm, so anything super far down the field or down the field outside the numbers, he's not going to have a lot on that. Some of his deep balls hang, they kind of hang. So he doesn't have the big arm, and you say, well, Purdy doesn't either. Purdy's got a little bit more juice on the ball, I think, a little bit more zip on the short range, and a little bit more strength on the deep ball. So he doesn't have a big arm. That's not his game. His game is everything in the short and intermediate. His game is that when he hits the top of his drop, he can process quickly. He knows what he's looking at. He's really smart. He can get the ball out short and intermediate, and he can throw from a number of different arm angles. He's a great athlete. He's quicker than you think, and he's smart. He's going to, the one thing about Brock is a riverboat gambler. He's going to drive the ball down the field. This guy's going to take the check down. He's going to be patient. He's going to take the check down. He's going to take what the defense gives. I think it's going to be a heavy run game. I think they'll move him out of the pocket quite a bit. 5 or 6 times, dash right, dash left, sprint right, sprint left. I think you're going to see him moved, and I think he's going to take the check down and keep. I think the whole game plan is run the ball and dominate the time of possession, and I think he can do it. Mistake-free is really the key.
We're talking to Larry Kruger here on the UMA guest line. We were talking, Krug, earlier about things you want to see from the Niners that would lead you to believe they can turn things around this season. And I said something tangible I think we could see in the next couple of games, and would love to see it start today, kind of on the heels of what you were just saying about running the ball, is a Christian McCaffrey game. Like starting to see some of the Christian McCaffrey we were used to seeing over the last couple of years. If he gets out and is explosive, can find the end zone, and continues like he has in his career to look like the best player, obviously the best player on the field, that's the guy you can ride. And that would be something we haven't seen this year that still may be in the can or in the tank there that could lead you to believe, hey, this team has something at least offensively that could change their fortunes and may help enough today to get a win over a team like the Packers, who in the last few weeks hasn't done a great job at stopping the run. Where are you on that? On if Christian McCaffrey shows you he can still be the same guy, that the fortunes of this season and this team could change a bit?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great one. I mean, this is the 3rd game back. He hasn't been spectacular, but he hasn't been bad or anything. He's just not quite been Christian. I'll go further than that. I think you're right on as far as it's the run game today. But to me, it's more about, can this run game get going with some rhythm and some, when this run game's looking great, I think at least, it's when you're using different players in different formations, attacking in different spots. You're running up the middle. You're running to the edge. You're using, Deebo. I mean, even though a lot of people are like, enough of the Deebo runs, but when you're mixing in, runs to the perimeter, runs to wide receivers, I'd love to see a couple of runs to Garendo. I think when the big key, though, is what I'm not saying, which is the penalties. I mean, the Niners had 9 penalties last week for 54 yards against Seattle. Of those 9, 7 went against the offense, 5 went against the O-line. You have to be much cleaner in the run game. That's what's burning this football team a lot on the offense, is they don't have the talent this year or the big play ability to overcome, making a false start or making some kind of a penalty that puts you in a hole. So that's the key, is just got to play clean up front. You got to get it done without the penalties.
Why is the Deebo Samuel running attack not been effective?
Because he's lost a step. He's not the same athlete that he was. And a little bit of the defenses have seen it. When you win, the thing in the NFL, if you go into an NFL office in February, February, March, beginning of the offseason, what are these guys doing? Or if you go into their offices between, let's say, mini camp and camp, what are they doing? If the coaches aren't taking vacations, what are they doing? They're watching one of 2 things. They're watching the teams that got to the Super Bowl or the teams in their division. And when you've been to the Super Bowl a couple times in the last few years and your offense is one of the premier offenses in the game, people study everything that you do, from tempo to your utilization of personnel, and they got a real good idea on how to defend it. And I think the combination of people have a real good idea of how to defend this offense, and Deebo's lost a step. He doesn't get to the edge. He's lacks foot speed, and their weapons overall lack speed. So I think that's really the key. That's why I think it's important that they utilize Guerrero, and when he gets healthy, Cowing, because they got to put some of their sub 4-4 guys out there and make defenses make quick decisions. Right now, they're a little too easy to defend.
When you look at the 49ers defensively against the Packers offense, where do you think the 49ers have an advantage? I've been trying to think about that a lot this morning. We know no Bosa. Jordan Love will throw it to you. You got to catch it. And I think the Niners need multiple turnovers in this game today, Larry. But where do you think the biggest 49ers defensive advantage is against the Packers?
Well, I mean, the Niners obviously have still some. Yeah, well, they have some great defensive players, but Fred Warner's a great player, and you could claim, JD, that he's advantaged in almost any situation. But he's getting worn down. He only had 3 tackles last week. I asked him about getting worn down. He's like, no, I don't get worn down. But, he does, and he is. So, to me, if there's an advantage for the 49ers, it's that Jordan Love is coming into this game not in rhythm. Last year when they played Jordan Love, he was in an unbelievable rhythm. And, 22 touchdowns, 1 pick in his last, 10 games. I mean, he was really locked in. That's not the same guy that's coming into this game. This guy has turned the ball over quite a bit. This guy has taken some chances. So he operates behind a really good line that keeps him upright. But I think the interior rushers, I think if you blitz him in the inside, I think there's some holes there, and you might be able to get home on him. I think he's going to throw you a pick or two if you put a little pressure on him at all. So I don't know. I don't see a clear advantage anywhere other than I'll give Demo an edge on anybody in the slot right now. I mean, Demo against Jaden Reed in the slot is going to be, I think, a great battle royale, and I like Demo, who's more physical, to kind of beat up Jaden Reed.
Krug, what's your before we let you go, your thought on how Jordan Love has been playing this year?
Well, he's been dinged up. He's equal parts spectacular and maddening if you're a Packers fan. He turns the ball over. He makes some questionable decisions. You forget how young he is. He got into a scald last year where he played as well as any quarterback in the entire league. But, talking to Packers people this week, they're like, that player has not really shown up this year. So I think if you can fool Jordan Love, you got to remember he's still very much a young player. If you can give him some different looks pre-snap. I mean, Copes, this game, in my opinion, is all about Sorensen. We're going to find out what Sorensen's got because he's not going to have Nick. Nick's the ultimate security blanket. He's going to have to dial up pressures. They're going to have to make sense. And they're going to have to be executed, and they're going to have to play mistake-free football and tackle and hustle and we're going to find out a lot about Sorensen. If the Niners defense has swagger and dominates and blitzes and they look seamless, maybe Sorensen is the right guy. If they just get ripped apart here, maybe Sorensen isn't the right guy. I think this is a big referendum on Sorensen.
Now, Krug, I love you, man, and I know that you mess this up every week, but I'm still going to give you a chance to pick a player to bank on, which is sponsored by Casino Matrix. Just drop in for gaming, dining, sports. Please gamble responsibly. 1-800-GAMBLER. Look, man, Sorensen, I know he's not playing, right? I know you're not banking on Sorensen. So who's going to be this week? Yeah, we may have. Exactly. He may be out there at DM, dude, opposite Eater Gross Matos. What do you like today? Who's your player to bank on in this one?
I'm going to say Kittle. The way first of all, the Niners are 0-2 this year when Kittle doesn't play. Yep. Kittle's having quietly an awesome year. Kittle is the leader. He's a tone setter. The way he looked us in the eye on Wednesday and was like, guys, I don't care what the report says. I'm going. He's not just going. He's leading. And I think he's going to lead them to whatever they got today. I think Kittle's going to lead them there.
JD, who's your player to bank on?
I'm going to roll with Christian McCaffrey in this one. I think he's going to get a lot of opportunities. It hasn't quite looked like the Christian McCaffrey we're used to seeing, and I think he's going to he's going to make the most of it and have a big game, both in the pass game and in terms of the run game. If the Niners are going to hang in it, I think it's on him.
You guys are all chalk. I'm going to go with Demo Lenore. I'm going to go to the secondary here. I think turnovers today are going to be a huge part of what they do. I don't know how much pressure they're going to be able to generate up front, but the secondary going to be key. I'll take Fred Warner, too. I get 2 guys because I want them. Adam Copeland, John Dickinson with you. Larry Kruger, you hear him weeknight 6 to 7.
I'll take Mustafa. I'm going to get Mustafa and Jalen Moore, actually.
I know who took the extra piece of banana bread. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's definitely me. It was me. If there's one, it's like, everybody got one and I can have a second, I'll take the second one. Yeah, that's my slice.
I think we know who took the second piece. Hey, look, if we're gonna actually put money on the table on this, give me JJ. Give me JJ.
Juwan Jennings, dude.
Juwan Jennings has got a 35% target share the last 2 weeks. I mean, they don't have anybody. They're running out of dudes, and he's like, hey, man, throw it to me. I'll catch it. So if the money's on the table, man, JJ will rise to the occasion.
I'm with you, man. Maybe the best receiver on the roster. Adam Copeland, John Dickinson with you. Larry Kruger will join us after the game. Larry, enjoy the game. We'll talk to you later, bro.
Well, we'll see if we enjoy the game. We'll try to enjoy the game, but we'll definitely talk to you guys in the post.
Larry, try to enjoy the game. We'll maybe talk to you later, depending on how we all feel. All right, dude. Talk to you later. Good stuff there from Larry Kruger. Make sure you're listening to him Niners Nightly, weeknight 6 to 7 on KNBR. When we come on back, we'll get you what's on deck for the 49ers. What are your deck expectations is what we'll talk about next for this one. And we'll get you a scoreboard from around the NFL as Week 12 is underway. And by the way, for fantasy football players, it is bye-mageddon out there. There are 6 teams on bye. By the way, you're getting Week 14 buys, too. How about that? Ravens don't get a bye until Week 14. They've been grinding out through this season. Week 12 is upon us. Niners and the Packers, a 125 kick. Adam Copeland, John Dickinson with you for about another hour or so only here on the Sports Leader.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys. sound right, boys.
Unique. I think he's just gotten better. I think he just continues to get better. I think he gets smarter. He's making throws. He's giving his players opportunities to make catches when I think he knows when it's a good time. But he operates really fast. I think he understands the system and how the offense runs, so he does a lot of stuff on time, and so he works through his progressions, I think, the right way. I mean, that's essential, really, I think, with him and the running back. I think that's why, it makes him a really good offense.
As a voice of Nick Sorensen, 49ers defensive coordinators. The Niners get ready to take on Jordan Love. That's who he's talking about. They're operating that Packers offense. Jordan Love on the season, 11 interceptions and has thrown one in every game so far. Adam Copeland, John Dickinson with you. JD is live from Lambeau Field where the Niners will be taking on the Packers at 1:25. You can hear it all right here on KNBR, the sports leader. Let's get what's on deck, sponsored by TimberTech Decking and Railing. Everything wood should be. Visit TimberTech.com. The question always is, what are your deck expectations for this game? Now, the 49ers aren't going to win this game in a shootout. They haven't been in many shootouts this year. If you qualify any of the games they've been in shootouts, they've had big leads where they've had to try to suppress the offense of the opposition. We saw that with the Rams. The Vikings was a game that kind of got away from them a little bit. Same thing at the end. The Cardinals, again, none of these games really like absolute shootout foot race games, and I don't anticipate this is going to be like that. I expect sort of a sloppier, sort of drudgier game. I don't think the Niners can win a game 17-10 in this one. I do think that if they are going to win, you talked about it, 23-20, and he's going to take more than 20 points to win this one, and you'd like to say the Niners are going to get to 30, but for me, this is a game where the Niners, I think almost regardless, are going to end up running the ball 25 to 30 times because I think that's where all of it's going to come from in terms of the offense, and I do anticipate sort of what we've seen from sort of the teams that are inefficient when it comes to running. The Patriots were like that this year. The Cowboys, Buccaneers, a team that didn't run it exceptionally well. A lot of dump-offs and a whole lot of screen plays. I think that's what you're looking for from the backfield today, which sort of why I anticipate maybe seeing a little bit more of Christian McCaffrey lined up in the slot and George Kittle being out there will be huge for them today, as Krug pointed out. 0-2 when George Kittle doesn't play. He will play in today's game. What do you expect in this one from a Niner offense?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of Christian McCaffrey. I think it's going to be a lot of trying to throw it to George Kittle. I think they have to figure out a way to get Deebo Samuel involved. I mean, there's just too many weapons to not have more of a balance to what the 49ers are trying to do as far as their star players there. Interested to see what happens with Trent Williams. I think that's a big key to this one. If he's able to go, that they can really lean on that left side of the line. If he can't, then I think that's another problem. It's the in-between game. I think, to me, though, all of that, we focus on the offense. I think today really has to be on the defense. I think it's a multiple turnover game. And I know that may be incredibly difficult to have happen with Nick Bosa out. But you mentioned Demo Lenore, and Larry mentioned him being somebody that he'd take, in coverage against anybody. I think it's multiple interceptions in this game, short field, maybe even a pick six or a fumble six. Like they have to win the turnover battle to the point where they're scoring points off of it that impacts the outcome of the game. I think that's the pathway to get into the low 20s and keep it out of that 17-13 range, which I don't know that necessarily the defense can do.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I don't think they can get to 30. So I really think if we're talking about a win in the postgame, it's going to be because the 49ers forced 2 or even 3 turnovers, 2 picks, and a fumble going the other way.
What do you make of the receiving core of the Green Bay Packers? Because they're kind of, as Tim put here in our notes, they're kind of a hodgepodge of guys, which I like that. They're sort of a lot of the same guy, it feels like. But they found some players. They're led by Jaden Reed, 38 catches for 643 and 4 touchdowns on the year. Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson, Dontavian Wicks. Wicks has 4 touchdowns. He's tied with Reed for second most. For most on the team. He's tied with Reed for the most on the team. I think Tucker Kraft actually has the most receiving touchdowns to this point, 5 overall. So, yeah, Reed and Wicks tied for number 2.
To the tight end.
And Tucker Kraft is a weapon, man. I mean, they go to him a lot. He's a safety blanket, but he's also a big-time pass catcher. Just what do you see from the receiving game? Because Christian Watson's had a couple of big games. He's had hamstring problems since he got to the league, but he's an absolute burner.
Yeah, Watson's the one that I think I would look for the Packers to look to attack with down the field. Dobbs is solid. Reed's been the guy who's leading the way. I'll tell you this. I want to get your thought on this. We kind of joked earlier about the Zach Taylor, McVay, LaFleur.
The branches of that tree. Yeah, right.
Yeah, all those branches of the tree. What's the one thing that they all have in common when they sense a vulnerability against an opposition? What do they want to do? They want to attack that vulnerability relentlessly. And it comes back to something we've discussed a lot here in the last month, which is the fact that the 49ers still are at their most vulnerable defensively, stopping the run. I look, as much as the receivers are going to impact this thing and they're going to try to get Jordan Love into a rhythm, I look at Green Bay and Josh Jacobs and that they're going to try to hammer him and really put it on the Niners and force the Niners to spend extra bodies to slow him down. I feel like I almost look at LaFleur today like I would look at Shanahan in a game where it's 30 to 35 rushes. And I think the Packers believe, in looking at the 49ers defense, that they can run for 200 yards on them. Can the Niners stop the Packers from doing that, force them to be a little bit more one-dimensional, and then I think Jordan Love might throw it to you, and you get the turnover differential that I think the Niners are going to need.
Well, there's only 4 teams, actually 3 teams in the NFL better than the Niners at yards per attempt, and really Philly's at the exact same. Niners are going at an even 5 yards per attempt, as is Philly, so they're tied for third best in the NFL. Arizona at 5.2, Baltimore at 5.8. That should come as no surprise, but the team down there at number 6 at 4.9, and really they're tied for fourth because they're right behind the Niners, Tampa, and Philly at 5 a carry. It's the Packers at 4.9 yards per attempt. Now, when you think about the Niners' run defense, what's your thought on it? Because I think all of us go, well, it's just not very good in general. What do you think of the Niners' run defense to this point?
Yeah, I think they lack having 2 consistent linebackers, which is part of it. I mean, not having Warner and Greenlaw to fly around and make tackles instantly makes you vulnerable at the second level there in terms of being able to tackle. But it's just interior defensive line. The 49ers just don't have the girth. They don't have the bulk to plug it up consistently. They get pushed around. And I think that's why we've seen teams that haven't always put up gaudy numbers against the 49ers in the run game, but have confidence that they can get what they need when they need it. They have confidence they can get a 4-yard gain or a couple of 4-yard gains and pick up a first down and bleed the clock. And the teams have really used the run game to get their entire offense into a rhythm against the 49ers. But to me, it comes down to they don't have that second linebacker to come up and fly around and go sideline to sideline and make tackles, but it starts on the interior where, as much as you like Malik Collins and you like Jordan Elliott, there's just not enough sheer bulk and girth to not get moved off the spot at the line of scrimmage, and it almost has turned into a guaranteed 3 to 4 yard gain in a lot of these matchups, unless the 49ers have completely sold out to stop it, which can lead them vulnerable in the middle of the field in the pass game.
I'm with you. And what's funny is these two teams comparable in terms of what they do offensively and defensively against the run. The Niners, I said, run it at 5 a clip. The Packers at 4.9 a clip. The Niners are 9th best in the league at stopping the run at yards per attempt, 4.3, which may be a bit of a surprise that they're a top 10 team in yards per attempt against. However, you go a little bit further down that list, and at 4.4 yards per attempt allowed, just a tenth of a yard per attempt better or worse than the Niners is Green Bay. They're at 14. So, again, it's bunched up there, but they're 2 comparable teams. It's why I looked at today's game and go, Christian McCaffrey, absolutely the guy who can put this team on his back and carry them. What can J.P. Mason do to help you? Will Deebo run the ball out of the backfield, and will they continue with some of those end arounds? I'm ready to just kind of bang that end around right now. I don't think we need that. I'd say put it away for like 3 weeks and then see what happens, you know?
It's such a big part of the offense, though, when the offense is clicking. Like, I just don't see Kyle Shanahan doing that. I mean, do you see? I just think they look at it.
No, I don't. No, I don't.
So I think if 2 is too many, then we're probably going to at least see one of them. But they got to figure out ways to get Deebo involved in the action. If it's a step slow, as Larry mentioned earlier, whatever it is, like, he's too talented to not be a part of this thing as the 49ers are looking for offense.
Adam Copeland, John Dickinson with you. The Niners and the Packers are coming your way. We are under 2 hours from kickoff, a 1:25 kickoff. It can all be heard right here on KNBR 104.5 and 680, the Sports Leader. We'll go to Greg Papa and to Tim Ryan up in the broadcast booth in just about an hour or so. But when we come on back, you'll hear from Wayne Larrivee, who's on the call for the Packers, get his thoughts on what Jordan Love has done this year, how he has looked, and what kind of threat he poses to this 49er defense. Niners and the Packers. It's Week 12. Niners at 5-5 on the Sports Leader.
So he actually hurt his arm last week against his shoulder last week against Seattle. And Monday, they gave him an MRI, just showed a shoulder strain. Tuesday, Wednesday, practice. They thought he was tracking on the right pace there. And then Thursday, went out and tried to throw. It just locked up on him. So what nobody knows is they gave him another MRI on Thursday, but it didn't really show anything else. So they're kind of living a question of when he's going to come back there. They're going to just try and rehab it, hope he comes back next week. They just don't know right now.
As opposed to Jay Glazer on Fox this morning. Jay Glazer's got insight on, he's in with all these agents, he's in with all these players. That was him on Brock Purdy. We found out from John Lynch that Brock Purdy had an MRI. Found that out Friday morning when he was on with Murph and Marcus, that Brock Purdy had an MRI on that shoulder. And when Kyle spoke to us on Thursday afternoon, I guess it was, evening, he had said that he had said that Brock had heard it in the game, didn't know exactly when, was asked something by Matt Mayoko in the press conference this week, whether or not it happened on that diving touchdown run. And he said, I don't know if that's when it happened, but he said at some point throughout the game it started bugging him. I do remember JD throughout that game. He was on the sideline a lot. He always gets loose before he goes back out for a new drive, but he was out there throwing an awful lot with Brandon Allen. Yeah, extra, trying to get loose. And again, that's what Steve Young says, is when there's an MRI done and you're throwing the ball that much to get loose, there's a spot, there's something in there that's bothering him. That right there was I just blanked on his name again. Jay Glazer talking about
Jay Glazer.
Talking about how he's had a second MRI. So they really want to make sure that there's no structural damage here. If this is simply pain or discomfort, I mean, you got to wonder how much it would affect accuracy or his ability to throw the ball. But I don't know when it's a throwing injury for a quarterback at what percentage you put him back out there. You know what I mean? It's not like his finger came down on a helmet and he's just trying to keep that thing braced or something like that. And it's not the offhand or the off shoulder where you can get away with it. You just want to protect it and nurse it a little bit. I mean, I'm sure there's concern going into next week, but this seems like maybe it's a week-to-week thing right now for Brock Purdy, if in fact there was a second MRI done just to make sure.
Yeah, and that's what I would think of in terms of you get the first MRI coming off the Seattle game. First MRI, I think by all indications, based on what John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan both said, hey, looks pretty good, nothing to be concerned about long term. Brock's going to get out there, go to practice. Didn't quite feel right to the point this week at practice where he had to shut it down. And it basically to me means it should have been feeling better than it did. And they're like, why doesn't quite feel right? And then you go and you look again with a second MRI. I mean, to me, that's cause for concern. That would lead, I think, the conspiracy theorists among NFL and 49er followers to wonder, and I'll just ask you, if maybe there's something a little bit more serious going on that hasn't been let on to this point. Now, I don't necessarily want to go there, because it could just be as simple as, hey, Brock Purdy didn't feel better like the first MRI showed he probably should throughout the week. And then so you go get another one, and now we're kind of wait and see on what the second one truly showed. But, yeah, it would give me pause to think what's been reported up until that point, that things are kind of optimistic and there's a belief that he could come back against Buffalo. Let's hold off and wait and see on that, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, again, and the cold, too. You got to wonder where that plays a role. I mean, guys having to get loose, it's always questionable. I don't love hearing that he's
colder in Buffalo. Yeah. Colder in Buffalo next week than it even is here at Lambeau.
You called it San Francisco cold. Hell, they'll be in bikinis out there at Lambeau Field today with their brats. If it's like San Francisco cold, they're like, this is beautiful.
Copes, I kid you not, man. I was around having a couple brews and brats last night, and people in and outside of the bars in Green Bay and Appleton talking about how beautiful it is, talking about how warm it is.
It's like summertime weather here in Appleton, yeah.
It was a dog my cat universe, bro. I was like, what? The people are like, oh, it's warm. And I'm like, it's 40. Like, in what world is that warm? Yeah. But when it could be 8 or -2 or even 22, 40's pretty warm for these parts.
Yeah, that's it's something to monitor for sure. The weather today, we'll see what happens. Brandon Allen used to playing in some cold weather. He was in Cincinnati, but again, has not made a start in a few years. As who was it who said it just a few minutes ago? I think it was Matt Mayoko who said it to us, that Brandon Allen has had fewer starts in his career than Josh Dobbs had all of last season as a member of a couple of different teams. So we'll see how he looks today. I don't want to say rusty, but again, game action will be the first time since he was in the preseason, the first time against a full NFL squad in the Green Bay Packers. So they're taking on the Packers today, who I think we're in agreement, maybe not as good as their record says they are, but again, you don't have a full 49ers offense or defense here. They're banged up. They don't have a starting quarterback. Christian McCaffrey is going to be out there. Both these teams somewhat effective against the run. The Packers have been worse as of late. Both teams run the ball fairly well at just about 5 yards a clip. The Niners, 5 yards per attempt. The Packers at 4.9. Wayne Larrivee, the Packers play-by-play guy, joined Papa and Silver, or as I affectionately like to call them, Greg and Greg. That's where I'm going. Papa and Silver on the
just two guys named Greg.
There's a couple of Gregs hanging out on the midday show here on KNBR from 10 to 2, Monday through Friday. Here's Wayne Larrivee talking about Jordan Love, and he was asked, is Love on the same page as guys like Favre and Rodgers? Here you go.
Well, I think he spins it really well, Greg, and to put him in that category yet, I think we have to see a little bit more. Obviously, he's just in his second year as a starter, and really in his career just getting it going. So. Is he on the level of just pure passer like Rodgers or the cannon arm like Favre? Probably not as strong an arm as Favre. Probably a little more accurate than Brett was. Although, again, this is something that came on toward the end of last year when he he really picked it up. Right now, he's, he just has not gotten into a rhythm yet this year, and hopefully this second game in a row off the bye week, he can start getting to that level. Aaron Rodgers, people complain about, well, Jordan doesn't take care of the ball like Aaron Rodgers did. Well, tell me something. Nobody in the history of the game took care of the football the way Aaron Rodgers did, period.
I mean, at the end of Aaron Rodgers' stint there in Green Bay, that's well said. What do you have, 7 interceptions or 6 interceptions or something over the course of like 2 seasons, and maybe fewer than 10 over 3 seasons? I may be a little bit off on my numbers there, but I know he had a couple of seasons where he went like 4 picks and 3 picks. I mean, he's right that nobody made better decisions. Nobody took care of the ball more. And that was something I always admired about, like even a guy like Ben Roethlisberger, who's obviously a Hall of Famer and a Super Bowl quarterback, but he knew when to take a sack. He knew when to throw it out of bounds. He knew when to just throw it at his guy's feet and how to get rid of it. That's something that young quarterbacks struggle with. And Jordan Love, I know he made some adjustments and some changes, but in terms of spinning the ball, he's right. I mean, he's one of the best throwers of the football in the game.
He is, and I think the Niners are going to have to force him into those turnovers, as we've mentioned. And, yeah, to go back to Rodgers, I mean, there was, I want to say, a 2-3 year span where he had 1 red zone turnover. So anytime you got down in the red zone, it was automatically going to be points for the Packers and a lot of times touchdowns. And so Jordan Love has the talent, but the thing that has hurt him is the fact that he will turn the ball over and throw it to the other team. So I think, and he has not been comfortable and not playing well and not in a rhythm, as Larry Kruger mentioned earlier. I look at this Packers team also. They have not been as good at home as they have been on the road. We think at Lambeau Field, dominant home field advantage. I'm just running through their home games here. 16-10 win against the Colts. They lose to the Vikings by 2 in a game the Vikings dominated and had a big lead in. You look at Arizona, ended up, they blew them out 34-13. That's the one Arizona loss since Arizona won at Levi's. But then the Texans, they're able to win close. And then the Lions, they basically got dominated by Detroit in their most recent home game 3 weeks ago. Barely won at Chicago. They haven't always been the most buttoned up this season here at Lambeau Field, which I think if you're looking for reasons for optimism, maybe that could be one for the 49ers.
Yeah, I'm with you. More from Wayne Larrivee here. He was asked about, so it's a little bit different looking Packers team than we even saw last year in the playoffs, right? Josh Jacobs, are running back now. Wayne Larrivee asked, what's the difference between Josh Jacobs and Aaron Jones? Here you go.
It's a little more physical, a little more pounding, I think, although Aaron Jones is a physical runner, but he doesn't have the size that Josh Jacobs does. And the thing about Jacobs is I think his vision in traffic is exceptional. And, when he does hit the open field, he can take it the distance. So he's a power runner, gives you a physical edge, maybe that some other runners don't. And that's really been what they've been looking for here.
Yeah, he's definitely more of a power runner. He's not as much of a pass catcher out of the backfield as Aaron Jones was, but he's given them an element that I think, Aaron Jones, I'm not going to say he fell off, but he was certainly better when Aaron Rodgers was there. And I don't know if it was just because he and Devontae Adams were able to open up the field more, but they ran the ball, it seemed like, more effectively a couple of years ago than they did last year with him. And they went with a couple of, I think they went with a multi-headed backfield. Josh Jacobs, former rushing champ. I think the Raiders regret having let him go, and there's a lot of Raider fans who would have liked to have him back, but he's been fantastic for them. Again, they're going at 4.9 yards per carry, and Jacobs is having a hell of a season.
He is, and I was going to ask you, do you think the fact that maybe Jacobs is more power as opposed to shifty, and look, Jones is power too, but do you feel like Jacobs being more power actually allows the 49ers to be able to get him on the ground maybe more effectively, maybe a little bit slower but more powerful, and you can stack multiple guys over to try and get him down? What's your take on that? Because I think the Niners are getting a heavy dose of Jacobs today coming at them.
I think it's exactly what they're going to get. I'm with you. Like, I almost trust the linebacking core more against those guys. Like, I don't think anybody's running through Fred Warner. You've seen him stop guys that are trying to sort of buck their head at him if they get through the line. And the 49ers, I mean, every team has trouble with it, but the Niners seem this year to have way more trouble with speed and electricity, not just on the backfield, but on the outside with receivers, guys who can burn them downfield, guys who are not traditional, like big-time number one big body receiver guys. I feel better about the Niners going up against them. Having Demo Lenore and Charvarius Ward's out there, I'll take that as the lockdown corner. It's the speed over the top. It's the ability to catch up and keep up with some of these guys. But if you got to bring up Mustafa, he's a guy we know can lay some wood. Fred Warner's okay there. If they're going to try to bull through the line, I'd love to look. We'd have to run back and and look and see which running backs have been most successful against the Niners this year. I mean, the Kansas City Chiefs did it well, and they did it with Kareem Hunt, but he's sort of a speed guy, a little bit of elusiveness. He can bounce off some tackles, and he ran over some dudes. That was probably the best running performance, but I'm with you. I think having a back there was a little bit more of a bowling ball may bode well for the 49ers, or a little bit better, maybe try to shut down some of that yards per attempt.
Yeah, I think, by the way, just looking at a couple of Niners, I'm trying to make out, I don't have the binocs up here in the broadcast booth, but it does look like a couple of 49er players are out, shirts off for the early warm-up here, showing that they're not going to be affected by the 40-degree temperatures.
But they won't be. We will not be intimidated, said the 49ers with their 40-degree temps.
No, and a lot of Niner fans, they've opened the gates here as well at Lambeau. And a lot of Niner fans on hand, as always, ready to have a good time and see if the 49ers can pull off an upset. 49ers not favored. We thought they were going to be favored in every game. An underdog in this one. We'll see how they play as a road dog here at Lambeau.
Adam Copeland, John Dickinson with you. A 125 kickoff is coming your way on the Sports Leader. One more from Wayne Larrivee, the play-by-play voice of the Packers, who was on with Greg and Greg earlier this week. He was asked about you were just talking about this, the Shanahan, LaFleur, that sort of coaching tree and how all that plays out. How about their coaching matchup head-to-head? Here's Wayne Larrivee.
Yeah, it's become a real rivalry. And I think Packers and 49ers has been a rivalry since the 90s when Brett Favre and that group were coming up, and they seemed to meet the 49ers every year in the playoffs. And to their credit, they kept getting the wins over the 49ers, great 49ers teams and great quarterback Steve Young. But so the rivalry continues. I think this is at a different level in that you've got two head coaches that know each other well. I think they're very similar. I think they're very similar in the way they conduct their business, in the way they handle things, in the way they call the game, that kind of thing. There's an awful lot of Kyle Shanahan and Matt LaFleur, and I hope that wouldn't bristle Matt LaFleur. But I say that in a positive way. So this has become a great matchup over the course of the years. This game's another regular season game. If Matt's had an edge on Kyle, it's been in the regular season. So if this is a regular season game, Greg, we're not in the playoffs yet, but it's a great rivalry game. And this young Packers team, the youngest team in the league, knows what it's all about because they saw it last year in San Francisco. Just a great ball game out there, and they're looking forward to this game. But you're right, these two teams, and hey, he's been at 5-5 for what seems like forever, and they always turn it on down the stretch and make a Super Bowl run. It's a credit to the players they have and to Kyle Shanahan's coaching. And I thought Matt LaFleur last year did the best coaching job I've seen in a long time, getting that young team to turn around and, go from like 3-6 to the playoffs and make a run.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because you go, they're very similar. You're right. That how they run. I think he's right in how they play call, how they run the ball. I mean, you look at what the Niners are doing this year, 9th overall in run play percentage, which may be a bit surprising that they're under 50, 47.6% is their run play percentage. The Packers at 49.67. So when you're talking about getting a big dose of Josh Jacobs in the run game today, I don't think there's any denying that's what you're going to get. Tucker Kraft out there as a short game pass catcher and can do a lot of damage to you, and they've got speed on the outside. This is going to be tough because they'll be able to open it up, but they would like to run the ball like Kyle Shanahan does more than 30 times.
Yeah, when they sense that vulnerability, all those McVay, Shanahan, LaFleurs like to really hammer you, and the Niners are going to have to prove that they're not as vulnerable to it as they have been this year because it sets everything else up. It sets up the middle of the field. It sets up the deep shot. And in addition to that, as we've mentioned so many different times here during the show, Niners are going to have to force some turnovers, I think, to the added points. I think it almost has to be 10 points off turnovers in this one for the 49ers to have a good shot to win it.
And to be fair, that would be a bit of something we haven't seen the Niners do this year, take big advantage of mistakes by the opposition because the opposition is frequently this year taking advantage of mistakes by the 49ers. Adam Copeland, John Dickinson, who is live from Lambeau Field where the Niners will be taking on the Packers in a 125 kickoff. We'll have it all for you right here on the Sports Leader. Still to come here, we've got your 49er Player Spotlight, the Steve Young Show, and we'll go up to the broadcast booth and catch up with our guy Tim Ryan all before you hear the Niners and the Packers right here on the Sports Leader. Adam Copeland back with your 49er player spotlight ahead of Week 12 of the NFL season, which pits the 49ers at 5-5 against the Green Bay Packers, who come into this one at Lambeau Field at 7-3. And for the first time in Brock Purdy's career, he is going to miss a start due to a shoulder injury he sustained in the game last week in that loss to Seattle at Levi Stadium. And that means that we're going to see for the first time in a 49er uniform in a regular season game, Brandon Allen. He gets the start today. 9 starts in his NFL career. He's 2-7 in those starts. This is his first start since the last week of 2021. So Week 17, 2021 was the last time he made a start, and it was because the Bengals, a team he was a member of back then, decided they were going to rest their starter, Joe Burrow, for the start of the season. He played in 6 games that season. That was his only start, and they did lose it. He has not played in a game since 2022. In that season, he was 3 for 3 passing for 23 total yards. Let's get to Brandon Allen. When he was asked about the team rallying behind him after a late starting announcement on Friday, here's what Brandon Allen had to say.
Yeah, I think they've done a great job all week. Like I said, we have a big next man up mentality, so nothing's really changed for those guys. They work every week, and I think we've had a really good week of practice and getting our timing down with me throwing the ball and all that with some of the guys, just because we don't have the built up reps that Brock does with them. But I think it's been a blessing having those guys in the huddle with me and some of the leadership that's in that huddle. So I can just come in and fill the spot for Brock for now and just try to make some plays, get the ball in their hands.
They'll be without Brock Purdy today. The 49ers will for the first time in his career. He did travel with the team, so he will be there on the sideline. They will not be with Nick Bosa today. Nick Bosa did not travel, and he's out for this one, waiting on some late announcements in terms of the starters for this one. We should have those in just a bit in terms of actives and inactives and whether or not Trent Williams is out there to protect Brandon Allen. And we'd like him to be there because Brandon Allen is this week's 49er player spotlight. The Hall of Famer Steve Young joins us every week, Wednesdays, on KNBR right here. You'll hear him this week. This coming week, it's the best half hour in sports radio. And this week, Steve Young made the comparison we've talked about this a lot. Tim Ryan talks about basketball on grass, but it also, the NFL has a comparison to the NBA, Steve Young says, in that you have to know how to close games.
You guys get sick of me talking about it, but it's like the NBA today. The NFL's wide open, and it's about closers. And most big games end up being about the last couple of possessions. And if you have closers, they get them done, and on both sides of the field. And when you don't get it done, usually it's one side doesn't get it done, but last week it was both. And I feel like we're going to be in a really tough spot in the league today if that's who we are. If we can't close, we haven't closed really well, this year. And I think that what do people go, well, what is it? And I think it's okay to start screaming out anything you can think of, because it's a lot of things that you have to wonder about.
Adam Copeland, John Dickinson with you, getting you ready for the Niners and the Green Bay Packers. 1:25 kickoff, and we'll hand it over to Tim Ryan and Greg Papa. And we'll go up to the broadcast booth now to catch up with our guy Tim Ryan, who's getting us ready for this one. And, Tim, we just found out more bad news for the Niners. Trent Williams officially inactive for this one, man. Just another bummer.
Yeah, against all odds, fellas. Here we go. Big-time adversity. The question is how does this team respond? I mean, this is going to be a soul-searching game. Obvious mental toughness and is going to have to come alive. And I'll tell you what, and you guys know the number. I don't know, 3 years or 36 games or whatever since they've been an underdog in a regular season matchup. This is a good Packer football team, but one that's beatable. And Brandon Allen, to me, had a very good week of preparation. And there's some things that he does do better than Brock Purdy, in my opinion. He throws a better deep ball. He's got a quicker release. Can he execute the game plan? I think he can. And then the question is going to be, and you factor in now no Trent Williams, how much does Jeff Hafley pressure? And they have definitely done it more over the last couple of games. Typically this season it's been some third down stuff and certainly in the fourth quarter, and it has allowed them to finish out games. I mean, so many stats that are comparable when you look at both of these football teams over the course of 10 games and red zone issues and some third down issues on defense. But when you look at how they have finished, this team has given up 32 fourth quarter points versus the 49ers that have given up 88. We all know the challenge has been to finish really on both sides of the ball, but in particular on defense. It's lost them 3 division games. It has cut the margin for error. How much does Hafley send the pressure throughout this game?
Tim, I switched to the other side in the Niners defense, and I feel like today is a day where they have to play big and also force multiple turnovers. Jordan Love will throw you the ball. He'll give you opportunities. Do you think the 49ers are in position to take advantage of those opportunities and force them into a few?
Yeah, well, I think you're absolutely right. He's reckless with the football when he's under pressure, and he has got tremendous talent. But it's all going to start with stopping Josh Jacobs and what he is as a runner, in particular in between the tackles, because, I mean, this guy is the real deal. I'm fired up to watch the best middle linebacker, Fred Warner, against one of the top backs in the league, Josh Jacobs. So they've got to contain him early or it's going to be a 35-40 run game because Matt LaFleur, without question, will stay committed to the run game. Having said that, they are position finesse blockers up front. Stay in your gap. Trust that the guy next to you is going to stay in his gap till the ball crosses the line of scrimmage. Bottle him up early. Get Jordan Love into 3rd and 6 pluses. And then without Bosa, how much, again, back to the question of the coordinator, how much does Nick Sorensen dial up blitzes? I don't think it's going to be a jailbreak blitz game, only because this 49er team's not a good blitz team. Why aren't they a good blitz team? Because they don't blitz. When you don't blitz, you're not real good at it because it is 5 or 6 guys working together. It takes synchronicity. It takes reps. And there have not been a lot of those reps and a lot of those, schematic pressures. So I think he'll pick and choose depending on the down and distance and the game situation. But one way or the other, if you let Jordan Love just sit back there and use that arm talent, he will pick you apart. Now, what goes with pressure is you got to play tight coverage. And you look at all of their weapons, with the exception of Tucker Kraft, the tight end, who is, as I look at it, one of the better young tight ends in the pro game. He can run after the catch. He's smart. He's savvy at getting open. But the rest of the guys, they are playmakers. They are young. They are very talented. But if you can get your hands on them and get hipped up to them early, they struggle versus physical, tight coverage. I would anticipate that from the 49ers today. I think they're built for it. When you look at the young players on the back end, you look at their skill sets, Ike Adams certainly to me is a better press guy and tight coverage guy than a zone guy. So I'm anticipating some physical coverage, and that's going to be the name of the game. Force Jordan Love to make tight throws versus tight coverage. And if you look at him, again, with all that arm talent, he will miss fire sometimes. So hopefully that'll be on tap today for the 49ers D.
Well, Tim, what's interesting is that Matt Barrows had put out a tweet a little while ago saying, here's a list of all the 49ers starting defenders who started in that game in the 2023 divisional round against Green Bay. It's Warner and Lenore, and that's it. So it is going to have to be a lot of these young guys. Here's the list, Tim, and it's 2 guys.
Oh, man. It's so many guys. Just go to last year's Super Bowl roster, right. Guys that were on that team that aren't available. So this team has been snake bit. But again, I think there's a lot of character in that room. There's a lot of guys that have played a lot of football. Brandon Allen has not started a game since 2021. But this might be the perfect storm for him. I hope it is.
How do you make up for not having Trent Williams?
You run the holy hell out of the football. that's whoever can run the ball and control the line of scrimmage is going to win this game. 49ers will take a big shot without Trent Williams out there because Jalen Moore is, I think, pretty damn good as a pass protector. He has struggled some in the run game, but as they have moved to a new scheme under Hafley with a 4-man front, remember these guys were all stand-up OLBs in a 3-4, playing the run game from a stand-up with half of their body free. This is a whole different animal, so the 49ers can throw some dirty looks at him. They think it's this, but it's really that. Is he blocking me? No, he's going to the second level, and they are susceptible to a lot of the same things the 49ers have had trouble with over the years in this scheme, which are crack tosses, jet sweeps, all the perimeter plays, perimeter screens, all that stuff. They have struggled as well when you watch the tape throughout the first half of this season. So hopefully some of those plays are on tap for the 49ers. But no doubt they got to win the line of scrimmage, and they got to get CMC. And I hope a few more carries for J.P. Mason. Got to get a couple of big pops in the run game.
How big of a deal is it, and how much changes with Kittle being back for the run game?
Huge. George not only as a receiver, and man, he was missed last week against Seattle, especially with all that shell coverage they were playing, but in the run game, being able to execute some of those, Foley blocks where he pretends he's blocking, but he's really not, and he's going to the next level. And of course, when he's one-on-one, he can block the ends, he can lock up safeties and linebackers and put them on their back. So having Kittle back is a huge shot in the arm.
Yeah, when you look at the 49ers secondary and the receivers that the Packers have, they've got Watson try to go deep. They got young receivers that they'll look to throw deep to. How do you combat that? Is it as simple as stopping the run first, like you mentioned, and forcing some of that pressure into some of those third and long situations?
Yeah, you got to play tight coverage. You got to limit the number of routes on air, because if these guys are playing on 7-on-7 and you're not challenging them physically, again, they're all young and they all aren't super strong versus physical coverage. So without question, that's what you got to do to, I think, have a chance to limit them in some of their production. Any of them are capable of exploding, and Christian Watson certainly has been coming on the last couple of weeks. Cannot let him get behind you. He doesn't have great ball skills when the ball's up in the air, but he can certainly run by you. So the secondary is going to have to be on point in this game.
And we haven't even really talked about him. Brandon Allen, what do you expect to see from him? What have you seen from him? Again, 49er fans have seen him in the preseason, but he didn't see the field at all last year as the number 3 behind Sam Darnold. What kind of quarterback are we getting here in Brandon Allen today?
Well, a guy who knows the system, that's number one. And the week of preparation, he's gets the ball out quick, Copes. He's got a faster release than Brock. He's got accuracy. He's got a tremendous deep ball. He's got to execute the game plan. Now, if Hafley's going to be bringing pressure, and they're going to have 5- and 6-man pressures, and at times 7 with zero coverage, you got to be on point with your hot reads, and that really comes down to the synchronicity and how prepared the receivers are. And I think Leonard Hankerson will have them ready to go versus those looks. That's the thing that gives me trepidation with Brandon Allen. If they want to sit back and play what they've done most of the year and play a lot of the cover 3 and quarter half like the 49ers play, because there's a lot of similarities. Brandon Allen's been seeing this for a couple of years in practice. I think he's very capable of picking them apart and delivering the mail. When they start sending heat, if those hots aren't there, there's no question that he doesn't have Brock's mobility. So we'll see how this game plan goes in terms of how they try to defend Brandon Allen.
Do you think we'll see more of a balance in terms of the distribution in the running attack? It's been a lot of McCaffrey. It's been very little, if any, Mason and Garendo. Do you think it's more balanced today?
Well, I don't think it's – I think they're going to see a few more carries for JP. I don't think 2 was enough in that game. Now it's hard to get Christian McCaffrey off the field with what he brings to the table as a runner. However, I think his biggest addition to this offense is in the passing game as a route runner. So I think we'll see maybe a couple of runs for Isaac, but certainly a handful or more for J.P. Mason. But I don't think it's going to be a balanced attack where you see 14 out of McCaffrey and 12 out of J.P. Mason. I still think it's the Christian McCaffrey show.
With no Trent Williams, is this a big screen pass game? You try to generate some offense and run game. We've seen teams do that don't run the ball that effectively against the Niners, and they'll do a lot of dump-offs, a lot of screens. Is that something you expect to see more of today?
I think we'll see some screens. Again, they're susceptible to it with how they line up on their defense, and they'll give some free access over on the corners, which means space to release, or they're 8 yards off in a pedal. And that's calling for screen opportunities. So the Deebo dash down the numbers, down the sidewalk, Copes, that's going to be on tap today. But In terms of the traditional heavy screen game, which I call rush beaters to help alleviate some of that pass rush, I don't know how much of that we'll see in this game, but I do like the quick perimeter screens out to the wideouts.
You mentioned Warner versus Jacobs. Is the 49ers' interior defensive line up to the task to not get pushed back?
Yes, they are. Jordan Elliott rarely gets pushed back. So I like him in this matchup. I think you look at Josh Myers and Sean Ryan, the other guard. He hasn't even been a full-time starter. He's a young player out of UCLA. Malik Collins has got to just be more consistent in terms of staying in his gap. And as I said earlier, trusting the guy next to him is going to be in theirs. Don't peek and try to make somebody else's play. If you're a B gap player and it goes through the C gap, that's not your problem. You got that's for the guy that's supposed to be in the C gap. So again, this is about trust and accountability in terms of a physical matchup versus this finesse, position blocking offensive line. The D tackles should be able to hold up, and they're going to have to.
Yeah, we were talking about that earlier, Tim, that like a more, I don't know if bowling ball back is the right thing to say, but he's a bruiser, Josh Jacobs. He can get through the tackles and get into that secondary. I said, I'll take my chances with Fred Warner if he gets through the defensive line there more than I like the Niners facing speed out of the backfield.
Absolutely, and again, back to the trust part of it is it may be a B gap run, but if that's clogged, he's going to jump cut and find the gap next to it. He's a gap to gap reader, just like you're supposed to be in this offensive scheme. He is a perfect fit for what they do. So again, you can't give him any easy ones. When he jumps to the next gap, now your C gap defender is sitting in there waiting for it. So it's about 11 guys swarming to the ball and gang tackling because this cat is hard to tackle, but I'm with you. I like Fred's chance.
If there's an X factor on each side of the ball for the Niners today, who is it?
X factor, I would say Malik Mustafa is a big X factor for me, just because the safeties are going to have to be a big part of the run fits when they're coming up into the box. And if the 49ers dial up some pressure, and I don't think there's going to be a whole bunch of it, but I think he is the best second level blitzer they've got. When you look at what his skill set is, the guy's shot out of a cannon, and if he's a free runner, he is going to get home. He's got to have a big game.
Tim, have a great call today, man. We'll talk to you later.
All right, Copes, good talking to you guys.
Good deal. Adam Copeland, John Dickinson with you. And that was Tim Ryan with the keys for today's game, sponsored by your Bay Area Chevy dealers. Visit BayAreaChevroletDealers.com. JD, just some final thoughts on this one before we hand it over to Greg and Tim in terms of what the 49ers can do today. I mean, it's all about Brandon Allen operating the offense in the way Brock Purdy did. It's going to be about winning the turnover battle. Again, if the Niners can run it effectively, and I've been saying this all day, that's what I'm looking for out of this offense and out of this team, is if Christian McCaffrey can have a McCaffrey-like game like we've seen in the past, that will lead you to believe, okay, maybe this team has something that we have yet to see to this point. If they can do that effectively and they can win the turnover battle, and to your point from earlier, take advantage of some of the turnovers of Green Bay, which again, Jordan Love has thrown a pick in every game this season. I don't want that streak to end here. I'd like that to continue on against the Niners. Can they take advantage in the way teams have taken advantage of them in the past?
Yeah, I mean, Tim mentioned it. To me, for the 49ers defense, it's can they hold up and stop the run, because I do think the Packers are going to look to go 30-plus times if they can, and if the 49ers aren't stopping it. If they can stop the run, Jordan Love is going to give the defense opportunities for picks. And then it becomes Brandon Allen being steady and moving the football and not making a key mistake and keeping everything on schedule. The elements should not be an issue, although the field, I guess it's a little damp, just kind of the moist air, so maybe look for some slippage here and there. But other than that, I mean, it's warm for Green Bay. I mean, we're talking about the low 40s and maybe it dips into the upper 30s here as things get late and the sun goes down. But the conditions for November in Green Bay could not be more ideal for each of these teams to be able to function. So stop the run, take advantage if Jordan Love throws the ball to you. You got to catch it. And I think it's 10 points off turnovers in this one. 10 points off turnovers is the pathway to the 49ers winning this game at Lambeau.
Well, and we have not mentioned special teams. Undoubtedly, it'll be a factor in this one, whether for good or for bad.
And special teams don't screw it up. And special teams don't screw it up.
For good or for bad, we've talked offense and defense all day. So you were asking Tim X factors on both sides of the ball, defensively and offensively for the Niners. I'm going to go offensively. Earlier in the day, I think you picked Christian McCaffrey for player to bank on, and Larry Kruger picked George Kittle. I think George Kittle's the one. I think he and McCaffrey have to be the two leading guys today. I know Larry said the other guy in the receiving game. Obviously, Juwan Jennings, who's had a couple of fantastic games, but it's not like Jennings is getting tons of separation. He's not streaking downfield past defenders. Brock has had to fit some of those balls into some really tight windows, and he's made a lot of really, really great plays this season. Even that one big touchdown he had earlier in the year, Brock had underthrown him a bit, and he was able to catch it and run it in against the Rams down in Los Angeles. But in terms of the X factor on both defensive and offensive side of the ball, George Kittle being back today is a major deal, I think, for Brandon Allen, what he's able to do, and for Christian McCaffrey, especially since on that left side you're not going to have Trent Williams. For those of you just joining us, Trent Williams inactive for today's game.
Yeah, and all of the inactives, it's Brock Purdy, Nick Bosa, who we knew, Mooney Ward, Khalil Davis, in addition to Trent Williams and Kevin Givens, the inactives for the 49ers in this one at Lambeau Field.
Adam Copeland, John Dickinson with you. We'll be signing off here in just a couple of minutes. Let me get you a quick look around the NFL just to keep you posted on what's going on across the league in Week 12. Again, 6 teams on bye, a bye-mageddon for fantasy football players out there. And there's some wacky games going on. Vikings right now up 17-10 on the Bears, 4:09 to play in the third. The Colts trail the Lions 21-6. Colts were up in that one for a while, and they were holding the Lions down. Jared Goff was not playing well early in this one, but they've just started the fourth quarter. Colts down 21-6. Patriots are getting whooped by the Dolphins 31-0 in Miami. By the way, Dieter Kurtenbach told me he liked the Pats this week. Just telling you. Our tips and picks on Friday said, kind of like the Pats. I was like, I don't know about that one.
It didn't age well.
Yeah, 31-0 is where we stand right now. Dieter catching a stray here on a Sunday morning on KNBR. Buccaneers are up on the Giants right now, 30-7, after they moved on from Dan Jones. By the way, I saw a headline today that said Daniel Jones looking to add or join a playoff contender. I was like, well, yeah. He's looking for anybody that's going to give him a little bit more of a stage here at the end of the season. Cowboys up 10-9 right now on the Washington Commanders in Washington. What's up, Greg? The Chiefs are up 27-16 over the Panthers. 2 minutes to play in the third quarter from Carolina. Titans trail the Texans after a pick six. Texans just took to the house 24-23, and they are just now about to start the fourth quarter. Broncos take on the Raiders a little bit later at 1:05. Of course, you'll hear the Niners and the Packers 1:25 right here on KNBR, the sports leader, with Greg Papa and Tim Ryan. The Cardinals are at the Seahawks. That's one to pay attention to today. You're looking for a loss for the Cardinals. A 1:25 kick. That one's a little bit later this afternoon as well. And the Eagles and the Rams play. Let's go Eagles, I guess, on Sunday Night Football over the Rams as the Niners continue to scoreboard watch a bit. And then your Monday night game is going to be the Ravens at the Chargers. Your team's on bye. I pointed out 6 of them: Falcons, Bills, Bengals, Saints, Jets, and Jaguars. But a team that is not on bye, the 49ers, 5-5, getting ready to take on the Packers at 7-3. Both teams have run the ball well this year and at just about the same clip and yards per attempt, as well as defended it about the same yards per attempt against. This could be a heavy run game as the Niners will play for the first time in the Brock Purdy era without Brock Purdy. He misses today's game with a shoulder injury, and we heard from Jay Glazer earlier today on Fox that Brock had actually had a second MRI this week just to make sure there was no serious structural damage. So good stuff, JD. We'll be back with you after the game. JD live from Lambeau Field. Appreciate you being with me, dude, and we'll talk after.
All right, appreciate you, man. We'll talk.
Good stuff there from John Dickinson, our super reporter who is out at Lambeau Field. We are getting ready to hand it over to Greg Papa and Tim Ryan. The Niners desperate for a victory here again. Their playoff hope's still very much alive, but they're going to need a win here at Lambeau Field against a longtime opponent in the Green Bay Packers, and really the biggest rival of my childhood. I look at the Giants and the Packers. Thanks to Kyle. Thanks to Tim. He did a great job. Fresh off the plane, Tim and I, from yesterday in Hawaii, and right back here at the Sports Leader. Myself and John Dickinson will be back with you after the game to walk you through this one, and we'll get your reaction from the callers. More to come. Niners and the Packers. Greg Pop and Tim.